I'm really glad to be here to talk to you guys, and thank you, Letty, for the invitation. And I just want to thank the Pastel Society for being a home for 20 years that I've been a member. It's a wonderful community of support for artists. I mean, the Pastel Society has given me inspiration and education and fellowship. And I've gotten inspiration from all the artists that I've met through the Pastel Society. So, thanks again for being friends. I made this into a slideshow so that I wouldn't forget what I was talking about from slide to slide. We all have different reasons why we took up pastel. I mean, some people started in school with pastel, or you get to pastel because you're trying different media, or you get to pastel because you can't paint. No, I mean, physically, the reason I started working in pastel was, I had a long period. This is going to be a long story, by the way. In the 1980s, I was raising a family, and I had no studio, and I didn't work for many, many years. And when I started trying to get back to my work, oil painting was out of the question. So I started drawing because I like to draw, and so I did a lot of drawings of animals, especially dogs. And in 1985, I made a trip to China, and I got really interested in the Shar-Pei dogs. And then when I came back, I bought a couple of Shar-Pei dogs because they were so much fun to draw, and with all those wrinkles. So I had just been drawing in pencil in black and white, and I thought, well, I need color. I mean, I think maybe I'll try to draw with pastel. So I bought a big set of pastels, and I was still working large at the time. These are big sheets of paper, but that's the only way I knew how to work somehow. So I did a whole series of putting the dogs out of scale into their context. I called it the Shar-Pei roots. And this, I'm sorry for this slide, it's because the thing is framed, so it's under glass. So I put them with the terracotta army and Xi'an. And then I put the black one in a bunch of gardens where everything was kind of wrinkly, And so that got me started.
Are they nice dogs?
Pardon me?
Are they nice dogs?
I can't hear you.
Are they nice dogs?
No, they were terrible dogs. They were bred for fighting. I didn't know. I mean, I just wanted those dogs. And there was some unscrupulous breeder in New Jersey who was selling them because they were very popular. And the two dogs that I had, there was a red one and a black one, and they hated each other, and they hated every dog that came into the yard. I mean, and they were sick, so they didn't live very long.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I moved on from the dogs. So all I knew how to do in painting was make paintings, like with paint. And these are a couple of big paintings. This was typical of what I was doing, because all there was trees. It was the Northeast. It was just all about trees. This was a commission by the county for the dying oldest hackberry tree in New Jersey or something. So I had fun. I loved painting, but I couldn't, I just couldn't keep that up. And this is the art history portion of the lecture. There are so many historic pastel artists that, I'm sure all of you have looked back at, not just contemporary pastelists, but if you know how far back some of these European pastelists were working, I chose this guy, Leotard. I don't know whether you've ever heard of him. He was, roughly early 18th century, and he was a very peculiar guy. That's his self-portrait. And the Royal Academy and all of those people didn't like him, but they actually didn't like him because he was very, very good in pastel. So, we all know the pastelists, like, this Mary Cassatt drawing just knocks me out. And, Degas, of course. And they use pastel as well as oil painting because they did their more serious work in oil painting, but they were interested in this fast sketching, gathering information, whatever. I think Mary Cassatt's pastels became much more popular than her paintings. Look at that. Just look at that. I mean, anyway. So I have included a random selection of pastels that I photographed most of these at an exhibition in Paris that was dedicated to pastel. And I'm not sure who that is. That might be, it's not Turner, I don't know who it is. You've all heard of Odilon Redon. He did beautiful flowers, but he was a symbolist painter. He did some very, very weird spiritual kind of paintings. The portrait of one of the French kings was by a Venetian woman artist, Rosalba Carriera. Have you heard of her? Yeah. And she was, at that time in history, portraits in pastel were very popular. I don't know why, because, they had to be under glass and they were pretty, that one isn't particularly large, but Vigée Lebrun's pastels, portraits are like 5 feet tall, I saw them in an exhibition in New York some time ago. The one on the bottom is Toulouse-Lautrec. And of course, his drawings were so powerful and fast, and he both used soft pastel and oil pastel in addition to his paintings. So, those are very dynamic. Over on the right, there were just, I don't know whose work that is, but it just shows you the range that you can get with pastel. And that's another fascinating thing. I mean, now you see people working in pastel from abstract work to photorealism. I don't know who wants to put themselves through that effort of making very, very tight pastels, but it happens. So, I guess I put the verbiage because I thought I might not remember what to say. So this was the kind of stuff I was doing when I started using pastel, and I kept working in both painting and pastel at that time. In the 90s, I got a studio of my own again, and so I could make work dedicated to both mediums. And the dogwoods was, I did a whole bunch of these out of my dining room window, see, because I thought that was plein air painting. Well, I'm looking at nature. Why isn't that? I don't have to stand out there, especially not in New Jersey with the mosquitoes and the heat and the rain. So, it was fun drawing that way. The one on the right is a larger picture. No, they're both the same size. So, I couldn't I couldn't imagine going out in the field and trying to work. I'd rather work large. So that's what I did. The canal one, I don't know if any of you know, along the Delaware River between New Jersey and Pennsylvania. It's a very historic area, and the Bucks County Impressionists are well-known American painters, and it's just a gorgeous area. There are all these canals that were towpaths along the river, and I kept wanted more sky, but there wasn't any sky. It was all vegetation. But I loved working large. So this was a big sheet of watercolor paper that I used to use. That's not bad, right?
Beautiful.
That was a weeping cherry tree in my yard, and I worked on that quite hard. And eventually, it's surprising, but a lot of this work sold because I had a couple of different dealers in New Jersey, and it was good because one sold like traditional regional landscapes, and the larger work, a gallery in New Brunswick, sold big pictures to corporations that have their headquarters in New Jersey. New Jersey is full of big, corporate headquarters, and they buy artwork that's totally non-controversial, So landscape was harmless. I could have had much more stuff in this slideshow if I knew that I was going to have extra time, but that's all right. Now, Wolf Kahn was one of my favorite artists working in pastel. And of course, he painted as well, and he was quite well known. But his landscape pastels just knocked me out because I wish I could loosen up a little more and do stuff like this, but I'm not so far. Now, have you ever heard of this woman, Janet Manafo? No. These are 5 feet tall, these still lifes. Sorry, Sarah, you got to get bigger.
She had a show in 22 in Santa Fe.
Oh,
a big show.
Oh,
I can't remember the gallery, but it's in the rail yard.
oh, I must have missed that. But I've looked at her work and I admire it a lot. Even though still life is something I just can't do myself. All right, I promise we'll get past the art history in a minute. You ever heard of Paula Rigo?
Yes.
Paula Rigo did some very disturbing political, emotional sort of work, and it's also very large. These are like 5 feet tall. And this is Germaine Greer. Do you remember her? And it just shows that pastel can do anything. You can just paint anything with pastel. So, I wonder, you're going to get out of class early today.
We'll ask you questions.
So, I started coming out to New Mexico, and I found my place. It was like I could see the sky for one thing, and the light was so different, and my sketches, this was still fairly large, but it's loose and just trying to get the information down. But in the studio, that was one of my favorite pictures from way back. looking up the road from a place in Ranchos de Taos. And I realized that I was interested in the weather, and I was interested in the light, and I was interested in the sky, but I never settled throughout my long years of working with pastel. I never settled on a style or a look for my work, because for me, the fun of doing it is like some exploration and experimentation and just seeing what happens. And when I chose a subject, I thought, well, you know, maybe it should be handled this way or that way. And I think recently I'm kind of moving towards tonalism, you know, like less detail. But I was way into details when I was doing something like that, you know.
What are the sizes?
Pardon me?
Sizes, please?
Oh, this is probably, because I was still working on sheets of paper, the Arches printmaking paper.
Oh.
So that would have been like 22 by 30. And that's the big, like 30 by 40 sheet, 29 by 41.
So did you take photographs and then work from?
Yeah, I realized that if you're going to be an honest landscape painter, you've got to go out and sketch, and I'll get to that. But yeah, I would, an idea of a scene or something would germinate, and I always take lots of photos wherever I am, and then sometimes I don't even think about them for a long time, and then I think, I really should make a picture out of that. And I make up parts of it. We're artists, we could do that. Marilyn, you probably don't remember this picture.
No.
When I first met you at the Pastel Society,
Yeah.
we got talking about the East Coast or something. Anyway, this is the 29 by 41 sheet. And it was the first thing I entered. When did the Pastel Society begin? Like 1989?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was new. As soon as I moved out here and I knew about it, I joined, and then I entered that New Jersey picture. And when I got this workshop prize, it was really great because it was a workshop in Zion. I had never been to Utah. I didn't even know where it was, But that, and I think it was a pastel-only workshop. It was
Yeah, I think Colleen Howard only did that.
yeah, and that was just mind-blowing. And first of all, there were no, where I was in New Jersey and between New York and Philadelphia, there were no art societies or places giving, I never heard of a workshop. I mean, I heard of this guy, Albert Handel out here who gave
Well, he
workshops.
was up in Woodstock.
What?
He was in Woodstock. You could have gone up to Woodstock.
But I was thrilled to get a chance to go out to Zion and paint outdoors. And it was that was the start of my involvement with the Plein Air Society. And they were just starting in 2007, something like that.
Well,
Right.
when Deborah was here.
Yeah, Deborah Paris
Yeah.
kind of started it.
Right.
And then you and Lee,
Yeah, well, when she moved, we had to certify it or something.
yeah, and then Carla Forrest, when she joined and helped us with all the stuff to become a,
No, we were already the 501c6.
yeah.
But so I volunteered to be the first president, then she was the first elected president.
So I was very involved. I got on the board, and I was the president in 2012, and then they never let go of you. So I kept volunteering for various things. So another artist that I admire a lot is Marsden Hartley. I mean, the modernist painters were so powerful, and a lot of them worked out here in New Mexico. Now, you know, he's known for so many other kinds of work, but when he traveled, he used to do pastels, and these are terrific. I think they're from like the 1920s maybe. And you can tell, I mean, look at the different way he's handled like this. You know, we know this, the gorge and the rocks and the sagebrush, and then these more distant hills, that's probably Taos, you know. So again, the point I just like to make is that pastel can do anything. So then I started traveling around with my covered wagon out into the West, and these are very standard, you know, I wasn't experimenting with the drawing or anything. I was just enamored with the landscape, and I wanted to get down every impression that I could. And, you know, of course, that's Monument Valley. That, I went back to Zion. That's Mount Carmel on the east side of Zion, where Maynard Dixon had his studio where he used to paint. And I don't know, it was just like, oh, I gotta make it look like that. Right?
Right.
Beautiful.
In 1994, I think, I had a residency out in Wyoming. And boy, that landscape I had never imagined. You know, I mean, I thought New Mexico was big, wide open and big and all this. But it was a little harsh. I mean, in a way, it wasn't. I was there in June, and it was cold and windy, and you know, the skies were full of clouds and all that. So this was a big picture that I made later from all the sketches and things that I did out there. But again, when I gave that talk about the getting residencies, what a gift it is to be isolated for like 2 weeks and have none of your everyday business and have nobody bothering you. The residencies that I had before the national parks were artist colonies. They weren't single things. They were, you know, you were there with a lot of other artists, which was stimulating, you know, musicians, novelists. There's some famous Western writer, I can't remember her name, but she was there when I was there. And so that exchange is worth being there, and having somebody give you 3 meals a day and no phone calls. I mean, it's paradise.
That's a lovely thing.
Yeah. And of course, good old Ghost Ranch. We'll never get tired of Ghost Ranch, right? Right, Paul? Right? So I've done, I go on painting trips. I've painted there a lot, like plein air paintings. But the one on the right was a big drawing, and that formation on the road out to the monastery, numerous people can't resist painting that. It's so interesting, you know, color-wise, and the strange shapes. And that's I have another version of that view that's in the Masterworks show right now. And it's a more distant view and a little more complicated. So I think I work kind of on themes, you know, not series, but, you know, I would get involved in sky. You know, I mean, how can you not be involved in sky? Where's Catherine? So I just I thought it was quite a challenge after you really start analyzing the sky stuff that's going on here. And it becomes almost an abstract composition, and yet there's so much you have to capture the light that's happening there, you know? And it's hard to exaggerate. I mean, you can't exaggerate the sky. The real sky is like crazier than you could ever paint it, you know? This was out in Llano Quemado, you know where the lightning fields is or wherever. It's out by the very large array. It's dead flat. It's just, there's a plain that's just like very, very flat. So that was, huh?
It's the plain of San Augustine, I think?
Yes, yeah. And so the challenge there was to kind of have some recession, try to mitigate the flatness of the thing, and try to get what was going on in the sky. The one on the right is another favorite location. I have a friend out in Galisteo, and I go out there to paint with her. And again, that's a beautiful place for skies. So, you know, that's more sky. More sky the better, right? And I didn't include, I mean, I've ranged around in subject matter except for still life. So I like doing portraits. Oops, what happened? Oh, there they are. Yikes. So this is just a random selection of things that the two on the right are my grandchildren when they were little, when they were young. And my dog, and the sadhu, when I went to that festival in India, and there were all these very intense-looking holy men. And of course I had to surreptitiously take photographs. And that was during COVID. I couldn't resist. My husband looked so ragged. You know how we didn't comb our hair and we didn't change our clothes and whatever. So that was a portrait I did of him. And right now I'm working on some self-portraits, so who knows where that's going to go. But I have to get it out of my system. It has something to do with aging, and the thing about portraiture is a nice break, and especially self-portraits. You can do yourself anytime, and it's a different way of making observations, you know. Last year, what the heck? Last year when I had that show up in Taos at the Taos Art Museum at the Fashion Studio, the theme of the show was all Taos paintings, you know, and it was kind of an archive of paintings that I've been making of Taos for the last 20 years. And this was my big piece. So again, Taos is another kind of light up there, and the mountains are so gorgeous, you know.
Can you put your dog in? Don't let your dog in.
I can't hear you. What?
I'm sorry, you put your little dog in the corner.
You got your dog, you got your dog in the picture.
Actually, I have to confess, yeah, that's my dog, but it's a compositional device. Because after I got going on this big picture, I realized that everything was running off the lower left corner, and I had to stop the line. Well, you know, emergency measures, you know, because I was too far into it to change anything. I couldn't. Well, yeah, except it was on a panel. It was. And then, you know, you probably have seen these recent couple of pictures. I'm trying to just kind of simplify things a little bit. I
My
couldn't,
reps are in blue.
you like that?
Yeah.
It's still for sale, Nick. Again, for some reason, I spend a lot of time in Towson. These skies really happen, you know? Now, these are 4 recent sketches. I mentioned the disastrous residency that I went on to Alaska last September. It rained 24 hours a day.
Oh.
And I could only, you know, get glimpses of the distance because it was just in fog and rain. But
Was it summertime?
September, the rainy season, I didn't know. No, it rains all the time there. And the lower right hand, I'm not really finished with that, but that was one moment where the light was so incredible. I mean, it was just, you know, the rain broke and whatever. The upper right hand one is actually from when I was on a residency in Cape Cod, and it was just the horizon, just the way I like it, just a horizon, 24 hours a day, and that was like at the break of day when, you know, the light is starting to come up. It's only 4:30 in the morning, and I would lie in my little cabin and look out the window and watch the day break. And I just said, I've got to capture that. I've got to make that look convincing. And, you know, I think I'm going to be trying to just make very, very simple compositions, and they might become abstract. I don't have an idea of what to do next. It's just going to happen. You know?
How large would those be?
Pardon
The
me?
4, what size?
The size of those?
Up to 4.
Yeah.
Those were 12 by 16.
Okay.
That's a nice
Yeah.
size.
Uh-huh.
So the skies, again, the skies, you know, I love to make the skies, and that proportion, that 1:3 horizontal, the last several years I've been doing a lot of work that's that proportion. It's interesting compositionally, and it's also, you know, lends itself to landscape.
Cinematic. It's cinematic.
Yeah, cinematic, yes. Yeah, so,
What paper are you using for that huge piece? What kind of paper you use for such a long piece?
that, I wanted to touch on that as I went along. In the last 20 years, we pastelists have had such an evolution in supports, you know? So when I graduated from those printmaking papers, and then, you know, Paul Murray taught us how to make a surface, you know, and then they invented those sanded papers with different types of grit. And so I've been using either, I don't like UArt that much. Those panels from Pastel board, and those are expensive, but they were good to take plein air painting because they're a solid panel. And pastel matte paper, which that might be on pastel matte. And I think Toby Clement uses pastel matte a lot. It's amazing how it grabs the pastel, but it doesn't have an obvious grit texture. I did go through, I don't think I showed any, I went through some years where I was painting a texture on the panels, but it didn't do anything for me. I mean, I could be rough or I could be smooth. I don't know. It just the texture kind of interrupted me. So, but it works for many people. I mean, look at Margie Lucena's work. I mean, rest in peace, Margie. Anyway, so that's it. Now, I should have had more pictures. It's only 11:15.
That's good.
Maybe I could find, no, I can't. I don't think I can find the pictures. I could show other pictures, but.
Could you replay the pictures?
She was saying start at the beginning and read.
Could you replay the pictures? Just
Would I replay them?
yeah, just
You mean backwards?
Um,
I can do that.
Nancy, what kind of pastels do you use?
Oh.
Makeup.
That's another whole topic in the evolution of, how you work. 30 years ago, when I started with pastel, all there was like Rembrandts or something. And then when I got serious, I bought the complete set of schminking. And they are a nice texture. But the colors are there's not a lot of intensity. There's a range of values, and it's all organized, and that was helpful when you're, starting. But, maybe I should be standing here. And when, I don't know, I moved on, when Terry Ludwig started making his incredible pastels, where you could get intense darks. So that was a whole nother thing. And all of you're addicted to pastels, right? You can't get enough pastels. And I like Great American. I like, what's the other guy? Jack Richardson, who just died. His pastels are very, very good. So, and you just keep buying them and playing with them. I'm not at all organized about the way I have, like hardness, softness. They're all mixed up, but according to colors and values. So I know which ones are soft and which ones are hard. I don't have to worry about it.
Tell us about your beautiful tray.
Oh, that Tabaret?
Yeah.
Actually, I bought that from Deborah Paris
I remember.
when she gave up pastels and went back to oil painting. And now that I'm moving and downsizing in Santa Fe, that studio equipment has got to find a room for me to work in, or the garage or something. Going back to in New Jersey when I first started drawing again, when I had not worked for a while, I mean, I had a room in the basement, I mean, that was the lowest point of my career. But I didn't need natural light for pencil drawing, so it worked out. It was all right,
Tell us about your residencies.
Oh, I did give a talk once, but I don't think you were a member yet, Stan. In order to get away from my husband and my children and my house and everything, I looked up how to go on these artist residencies. And the first ones, I mean, I knew of the fancy ones, like some of my friends had been to Yaddo, and they'd been to the McDowell colony in New Hampshire. And when I came out west, I looked up residencies, and they were private foundations. You know, they weren't national parks. And the one in Wyoming is at a big ranch that the owner dedicated to an artist colony and turned the barns into studios. And I mean, it's just gorgeous out there. It's in the eastern part of Wyoming, Ucross. And then I had another one outside of Chicago in the winter, which was at another foundation called Ragdale Foundation. And they also have a big Art Deco period estate that the family gave. In fact, it was a family of architects and sculptors who the one woman's sculptures are all over. Do you remember a novel called Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil or something like that? And there's a fountain or a statue on the front.
Yeah.
That was this woman who was part of that family. She had sculptures all over the place. So anyway, they endowed a foundation, and again, you go there and other artists are there. And then I thought, well, this is too much socialness for me. I want to be left alone by myself. So I started looking into the national parks residencies, and your tax dollars at work. These are wonderful because the history of the national parks was based on plein air artists popularizing. I mean, Yellowstone or whatever was the first national park, or it was like, I don't know, 1872 or something like that. And Thomas Moran, the famous landscape painter, his work was instrumental in telling and asking Congress for money for the national parks. And of course there were Western capitalists who said, not one dime for scenery. They would not endow the national parks. And they're still with us. But it became, the national parks became a place where they invited artists because, there wasn't that much photography, and they wanted the public to romanticize the national parks. So they're still inviting artists to document the national parks in their way. I mean, in modern times, they might be not painters, but they might be dancers or some other kind of art. But what was it? There was some other thing about the national parks. Oh, yeah, it was. So those programs continue, just like the government. Do you know that the Army still has battlefield sketch artists?
Wow.
No, yes, they do. There are, back in the Vietnam era, when all of my classmates were getting drafted, and they were all artists, and they got sent. Some of them got sent to teach painting to officers' wives, and some of them got sent to the foxholes and sketched. So that was pretty interesting. So, yes.
Since you've always painted so large, have you always framed those paintings and drawings? And what kind of glass did you use?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to talk about that one. I showed you those, like those Janet Manafo and Paula Rigo paintings. As far as I can tell, the contemporary ones are in a kind of a shadow box. I mean, a pretty deep frame, because, the dusting, it's a problem. The earlier French ones, they always just smack the pastel right up against the glass, and that's what I've always done too. And some people think that's a real no-no, but it sure protects them from movement. And if you're shipping your work, my God, you can't do it with a mat. You can't, if you have a spacer, it's going to end up on the other side of the glass, or the, God forbid, plexiglass, So anyway.
So on your big paintings, what type of glass did you use?
On On that big one?
Yeah, on any of them.
Oh, well, if they're going to be transported, or when I sell them, like a 24 by 36, I use plexiglass.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, well, some shows say no plexiglass, but many shows specify plexiglass on larger things because they don't want it breaking, you know. I've never had breakage of either glass or plexi because I use those strong boxes, which you could throw them off a building. They're really good. But I did pay for lately, especially. I want to present my work the best I can, and I'm using that. What do they call it? Anti-reflective glass. It's like museum glass. It's very clear, and there's no reflection. So that makes it pretty expensive. The big Taos painting, the 24 by 50, I think that cost me like $800 to frame. No choice. I mean, that piece of glass itself was like $300 or something.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. But you're worth it. I mean, the smaller things, you should always present your work the best way you can. It deserves it, you know. I want to get back to Stan. I love to talk about the national parks. So just look up, there's a clearinghouse online. If you just Google, you know, nationalparks.gov or something like that, there are a couple of other clearinghouses. There's an umbrella group called the National Parks Arts Foundation, and don't ask me why they administer just certain workshops, not workshops, residencies. They do Fort Union. There's one in New Mexico. You should look. Anybody wants to go not that far away, Fort Union. I had one at Aztec Ruins National Monument up in the Four Corners area. So there are various resources to find these things. And then, I mean, Susan Roden should tell us about that. I mean, she goes to a lot of residencies. And if you still have the energy to do it, you should do it. I can't say enough good things about just that opportunity to shut out the world and go there, you know. And you're not going to get, I mean, you have to go through the trouble of applying, and I've thrown those applications up at them for years, and I get turned down for lots and lots of them, but eventually you get one or two, and it's fun.
Which was your favorite?
You know, they've all been extremely rewarding, but I think, other than Alaska, I had 2 weeks in a cabin on the dunes on Cape Cod that was really rugged and isolated, and it was just a 12 by 12 foot cabin with no electricity, no plumbing. I didn't realize I was kind of being tricked into camping, but I'm from New England. I love to be by the water. It was so isolated. You know, it wasn't physically so far from Provincetown or anything, but it was a mile through the dunes to walk out there. And it was just me and the seagulls, you know, and it was paradise. Now, my husband and I both applied a couple of times to Dry Tortugas National Park. You know where that is? It's, you know, in the Gulf of Mexico at the end of Key West. And that one is so isolated. It's on a sandbar that's part of the Dry Tortugas Islands. And you have to have 2 artists go. They don't take one person. It has to be 2 people in case one of you dies or something. I don't know. I think the rangers come and check on you, but you have to be able to run the desalination machinery, and there's just nothing there but the ocean all around you.
When are you gonna find out if you get it?
No, we were turned down twice, so they probably know how old we are. You can. Anything else I could have covered that I missed?
What was your background in painting? Did you go to art school? How did you
Yeah, I'm just a lifer artist. I mean, I went to Rhode Island School of Design, and I went to Yale Graduate School, and I was, hoping to make it in New York. But after you have some kids and you have to get a real job, we moved out of New York to live in New Jersey. And then I had 10 years buried alive. And then I came back to life. All right.
So,
Oh, we're back at the beginning. You don't want to see that.
yes.
No, sorry. I don't know how to put it back on.